Well, good morning, everybody. Wednesday morning. Hope everybody is doing well. Darren Saul here from Saul Recruitment, and I have episode 16 of Saul Searching, the Saul Recruitment Podcast. Now, I have an amazing guest back in the studio today. Katie Jones, the High Performing Teams expert, is here. How are you, Katie?
Good, thanks, Darren.
Nice to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Always great to see you on the show. And we're going to be chatting about something that's really, really important these days, particularly in this situation and coming out of this situation. And that is employee engagement and keeping your teams aligned. So I'm really fascinated by this topic. And now more than ever before, keeping your teams aligned, being that we're moving out of the virtual way of working, or we're actually going to be integrating the virtual way of working to the real way of working, and I'll put real in inverted commas. So really going to be a fascinating topic. But before we get into that, I thought I'd just give everybody a little bit of insight into Katie and who she is and what she does if you haven't seen her on the show before. So Katie is a CEO and founder of CultureFit HR. She specializes in building high-performing teams to help businesses stop losing great people and reduce their recruitment costs. She has transformed cultures around the world by improving behaviors and maximizing profits. Katie has seen teams transform dramatically by engaging more authentically, achieving results, and just being happier at work, resulting in businesses being more productive. She says it's a lot easier to do when you have great systems in place and an expert to help you along the way. So we're going to be chatting all about why it's so important to focus on employee engagement right now and how we can actually do this. So welcome again, Katie Jones.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks for the intro.
My pleasure. Now, before we jump in, maybe give us a little snapshot of who you are, anything that I might not have covered, just to give everybody a little bit more insight into who Katie Jones is.
Yeah, so I've been running my business for about 2 years now. So I've had an extensive HR background, working in different various HR roles in OD, L&D, and HR trainer, facilitator, and coach. And I just love working with people and with teams. And my passion is around building cultures where employees are happy when they go to work. Because as I said, I've worked in HR for so long, and I've sat on the other side.
Yep.
And it's really hard to see when people are just, they just don't enjoy working. And you're at work, 5 times a week. You're spending so many hours there. You want to ensure that you are enjoying, going to work, enjoying spending time with your teammates, and just being really fulfilled in your role.
Absolutely. What is it they say? If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that saying. And, a lot of us are working harder and harder these days, longer hours. So we better love what we do, and we better make sure that we create an environment for our teams and our employees to love what they do. Otherwise, no one's going to win.
Exactly.
So, obviously, it's an interesting time. Everybody's kind of changed behavior over the last 3-4 months. There's a lot more work done virtually with Zoom and other platforms and Teams, etc. It's working really well. We're going to slightly move out of this period to bringing things back to more face-to-face, but I think a lot of this is still going to stay to a certain degree. But how do you think behavior has changed and engagement has changed over this time? And so why is this so important to think about right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So recently, I've been working with a team of people, and we wanted to know that as well. So we put out to about 300 of our contacts a survey asking them what is their biggest struggle at the moment through the last couple of months with their teams and with their people. And the number one thing that came back that they were struggling with was engagement.
Yeah.
And I think, I totally agree why that they're really struggling with that at the moment. And I think, leading teams remotely is more difficult. But if you think about the environment, so, people are working at home, they have distractions, they have families, they're struggling with isolation.
Homeschooling.
Yeah, and some of their employees might be on reduced salaries. So it's really hard to motivate people when they're in that environment at home.
Yep.
I know a lot of people that are close to me are really struggling with that connection with their other teammates, even on a social level. You don't have that, that water cooler chat around how is your weekend, what are you up to this weekend. So, if there isn't that that platform to do that, or it can be really hard to self-motivate yourself when you're working at home. So even down to communication, if you're in an open plan office, it's easy to build engagement and have a chat across desks than it is to pick up the phone to have a conversation or a quick chat with your colleagues or your team.
It's almost a bit of a paradox. Like, technology has made things much more efficient and much more accessible, but not necessarily more engaged.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Bit of a paradox. So if we kind of take a step back, I mean, what are some of the real benefits? And I know this is a bit of an obvious question, but I really want to drill down so we really get into the nuts and bolts. What are the benefits of a highly engaged team?
Well, having a highly engaged team, then you're going to improve your retention rate. So you're going to, stop losing great people, and you'll probably most likely reduce your recruitment costs as well. You're going to have lower absenteeism. Definitely, you're going to see people, not coming into work more often than, not coming into work. The teams are going to be have a higher productivity levels as well. But the one thing I think, if the team is highly engaged, they're going to really care about each other in the team, care about the team succeeding, and then they're going to more likely want to hold each other accountable, give feedback, just to ensure that everyone is doing a great job and the team is really, achieving the results that were set out for them.
Beautiful. A good friend of mine actually says, his name's Grant Tom, lovely guy. It's a very, very strong digital agency owner. And he always has the analogy when we talk about things like this and culture and behavior of teams. He always says it's like a sports team, a sports squad, that you all have to be working together to get the ball over the line or to score a try or to score a goal or whatever else. So it's really about the team together cohesively to achieve a desired outcome. It's not about every individual person, as gifted or as talented as they may be. So I think that's a really important point that you made, that we really have to make sure that we're working as a unit, as a cohesive unit, to make sure that in the long term, we all succeed and business results and business goals are achieved.
Yeah, and I think, that's a really great point around sporting teams, and I always use sporting teams as an analogy, because they are great, especially elite sporting teams, at doing that, just reviewing where the team, they care so much about the success that after each game you see that they sit there and they'll give each other feedback and say what works really well, what didn't work, what could we do better next time, so that to ensure that we win.
Absolutely. So, I love that. And they'll sit there, they'll review the tapes and they'll watch the videos and they'll rewind and analyze every move for an hour or two. And that's what we should all do, really, like personally and in a group. We should all sit there and analyze and assess our performance and how we can achieve and make things better next time.
Yeah, definitely. If teams took what they do in sport into their business, I mean, that'd be a lot more successful and achieve results.
100% agree. So, I mean, what are some of the ways then that you work, and in general, how can we build more cohesive, higher performing teams?
Well, talking about feedback, recently I read a stat that 4 out of 10 employees receive little or no feedback are disengaged. So feedback is a huge topic in terms of getting engagement. So when I'm working with teams, I usually get teams to practice actually giving and receiving feedback on one another.
Okay.
So it's really important that you set that up in the beginning to ensure that they prepare how to give constructive feedback first, to make sure it's valuable and relevant to their team members. But I usually do an exercise where I say, think about one thing that the team member that is doing really well, that helps the team to be successful. But then also think about one thing that person can improve on, to ensure the team, does reach success as well. So, teams absolutely love this. When after we do the session, I get great feedback that they're going to start to implement it into their normal communication rhythm. So some teams have, called it a Friday feedback round, and they spend 30 minutes on a Friday just giving feedback to one another. Yep. So, that's one thing that they can do to increase engagement and hold each other accountable.
Actually, I might just jump in for one sec, Katie, because I want to dig a little more into feedback, which is fascinating. So when you talk about giving feedback to each other, do you mean like what they call 360-degree feedback, like in terms of even a manager and an employee giving each other feedback, or is it more just on the employee level?
Yeah, so it can be both. Another thing that I recommend is that managers, if they're not doing it, is to build feedback into their one-to-ones with their employees, and definitely ask for the managers to ask feedback as well. So in a previous company I worked in, one of my managers did that. So, on our one-to-ones, she would ask, if I had any feedback for her. And at first it's kind of like, oh, I thought this was all about me. But it was a really great experience, and it helped her develop as well as a leader. So definitely employees should be giving feedback to their managers, and managers should be asking for it. It is two-way.
Yeah, and a lot of managers get scared when that comes to getting 360 feedback. They want to be the ones to give all the feedback, but God forbid they don't want to actually receive any.
Yeah, exactly. They're probably a bit scared about what they're going to hear.
That's right. So but it's really that little subtlety in mindset, in psychology, is already creating an environment of openness and sharing, and bringing the teams together so that it really works as a unit, and it's not about a barrier between management and employee level. So even a small, subtle shift of that nature can make a huge difference in its psychology. And I also wanted to jump in and just speak about one other thing. One thing I learned years ago, when you're giving feedback, even there's an art form even to how you give feedback. A lot of people forget that one of the best ways to give feedback is, in my view, is to first focus on the things people have done really well, and then focus on the things that they can improve. What are your thoughts on that?
Any way you give feedback, if you want to give one, a positive and a negative. I think back in the day, they used to call it a feedback sandwich, where they'd go positive, negative, then positive again. But look, I just think feedback should be given straight away. So it needs to be timely. It needs to happen. If there's a manager has an issue with their employee and it's a behavioural issue, it needs to happen then and there. Yep. It needs to be factual, so really objective. Don't bring any judgment into that. And it needs to be specific to that individual and relevant as well. There's no point in giving feedback that's not relevant to the situation or the employee, that isn't going to improve their development or a learning outcome there. So I think those steps, no matter if it's a positive or a negative, you're giving it one after another. I just think it needs to be timely, and it needs to be relevant, specific to that employee.
Awesome. And that's a really good point. A lot of the time our ego as managers, can get in the way, and we might just give feedback that is actually not relevant or not useful at all. So it's a really good idea to kind of check ourselves and think, before we give any feedback, is this person really got a benefit from this? Yeah.
And I think the other thing is, it has to be factual, so not hearsay. I think a lot of people I give feedback in the sense I heard you did this, and this person said this. That's not credible feedback then. So
100%. Yeah. Well done. Now I cut you off, so we only got to point one of all the different things that we can do to help build better employee engagement. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, so another way to build engagement is around getting buy-in from the beginning. So if you're in a business planning situation, decision-making situation, or you're starting a new project, ensure that you get involvement from your individuals within your team from the beginning. Right. So get their inputs. One thing that is really important is that research, it says that, as long as you get everyone's input and ideas. It's not about getting consensus, but if people get a chance to weigh in, then they're going to buy into the end decision. Even though it might not be their decision, at least if they've had the opportunity to have a say, give their feedback on something, or they have their opinion on something, then they're more than likely going to commit to that decision.
Awesome.
After. Yeah.
Awesome. And I think that's even more, that's important and relevant to everybody, but I think it's even more relevant to the younger generation now. I think they really respond to that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of companies need to start thinking like that. It's, if instead of having a senior leadership team or executive team that tell them what the new business strategy is or tell them what they're going to be doing, I think you're going to get more out of people if you get them involved from the start, instead of dictating what the outcomes, what the outcome's going to be, or what the next steps are.
Awesome. And so what are some of the great ways to actually do that, to actually start building that engagement?
Yeah, so you can definitely start by doing meetings around business planning. So a company that I worked for in the UK, they did it really great. So we would start with, with the SLT, working on the business plan from the beginning. And then we would then, we called it test our thinking with our emerging leader team. So we got them to input into, where we were thinking, what the next 12 months looks like for the organisation. So we'd get their involvement then, and then after that we would then take it to the rest of the business in our yearly offsite, and we would build workshops around each strategy within our business strategy. And it was great at getting that buy-in then from the beginning, from the whole company. So just doing those 3 steps is, the company is not then being dictated around, this is what our business strategy is. It's getting involvement from everyone and getting feedback, and then everyone is clear, everyone has clarity on what the next 12 months looks like, and then how they contribute to that as well.
Awesome. That's a very, very useful information, valuable insight. So we've dealt with feedback, we've dealt with buy-in. What else can we do?
Another way to get engagement is around employee engagement surveys. So if you wanted to measure engagement, it's a great way to get a benchmark around. I've used different types of employee surveys in the past, but the one that I think is really great is Gallup.
Oh, yep.
They have 12 questions that they've done lots of research around what is the best way to get engagement within a team. They've come up with 12 questions, and we used to do that every 6 months. You get a benchmark then from where the team sits, and then over the next 6 to 12 months you work on doing workshops around your areas of strength. So what you're doing really well, let's continue doing that, and then the areas that they need to improve, and then you put in strategies in place to improve those areas for that team, and then how it contributes to the wider business. But then you've got a measurement there that you can constantly ensure that you are improving on employee engagement.
Oh, fantastic. Anything else that people can do, or that those 3 are really the 3 big ones?
That's that's probably about it for now. Yeah.
Right. Awesome.
There's probably loads more, but yeah.
Awesome. So Katie, now I know that you're big on particular processes and what you call team processes, or your CultureFit engagement process. Tell us a bit more about what that is and how that works.
Yeah, so I have 6 steps to building engagement within teams. And the first, and I'll run through them quickly. So the first thing I do with teams to build engagement from the start. So if this team is a new team, there could be a project team coming together, first time working together as a team, or even if like businesses now are slowly gearing up to going back to work. I know there's a few of my friends are going in a couple of days and the rest of their team's going in a bit later. But because the last couple of months has been, there's lots of uncertainty, team members might have moved on, or businesses might have pivoted and goalposts might have shifted. I think it's a great time now to reconnect and reset with these 6 steps. So the first one is around building a shared vision. So you want the team to be really invested in what the next 3 to 5 years looks like. And employees that are more likely to contribute to the team if they have helped with building the vision around for the team.
Perfect.
The second thing is around team purpose. So it's really important that you understand, what that employee's why is. Why did they choose to work in the industry that they're in, and what is it that gets them out of bed every day to go into work? Yep. Find out what their why is first, and then ensure that you get everyone's contribution towards a team purpose and get their team's why.
Awesome. And that's such a big point, because we always fall into the trap of assuming from our own perspective what other people are going to respond to, and everybody has different ideas, different aspirations, different goals, different visions, different values. So if we don't ask, we could get it totally wrong.
Exactly. And I think this is a great point to get that emotional buy-in and connection for the employees as well. Because this is, if you can understand the individual's why, then it's easier to help motivate them and engage them further down the track.
Absolutely. We're all different creatures, that's
yes.
the beauty of being human beings.
And then so number 3 is values and behaviors. So if the company has their own values, then perfect, use them, unpack them. What do these values mean to the team? Yep. And come up with, their own kind of mini values underneath them. But if not, come up with their own team values, because this will help guide their attitudes and actions. And then behaviors. So you really want to come up with some behaviors that are below the line and above the line. I don't know if you've heard of that model.
No, I haven't. No.
Behaviors. So the top behaviors are around ownership, accountability. So you want to come up with behaviors that sit around the above line. Yep. And then, because that's kind of, you're coming from a place of control. And then below the line is, these are the behaviors you don't want. So they're coming from a place of fear. They're more of the blame and excuse. But it's really important that you do understand, the team understands what they are and what they look like.
Nice.
Because you need to come to an agreement of things that are behaviors that are unacceptable, that they can call each other out on when they see them.
Gotcha. I like that. It's kind of building a framework for behavior in that organization and for performance.
Yeah. And then the fifth is around, the fourth is around collective goals. So it's really important on a team that you have, the team are working towards the same goal. No one's goals are more important than each other's. Yeah. So it's really important, as I said, businesses might have shifted, things might have moved in the last, 3 months. So you really need to reconnect and say, okay, well, let's see what the next 6 to 12 months looks like. Has a goalpost moved? And what is this team going to be focused on in the next 6 to 12 months? So really getting clarity around that, and then clarity around how each individual in the team contribute to the overall goal.
Perfect. Love it.
The next one is communication. So like you mentioned before, a lot has changed, so there'll be a lot more virtual, meetings as opposed to face-to-face meetings. So really defining what the new communication rhythm looks like for the team. I usually work with a simple model for teams around 4 meetings. The first one being a daily huddle. So that's your quick 5 minutes, what's everyone working on?
Nice.
Your second one being your weekly tactical meeting. So really talking about tactical issues, even issues that might hinder the team being successful. So looking at what those obstacles may look like. So that's around 40 to 90 minutes. And then your next one is your strategic meeting. So that's a monthly 2 to 4 hour meetings. You only really want to be talking about 2 topics to get the team to come prepared to unpack those decisions, those topics, to have a really good outcome. And then your last meeting is your quarterly offsite. So that's usually a 1-2 day event. And that's around the team talking about, strategic, competitive analysis. But the main thing is around learning. So team development on those quarterly offsites. And making sure that you build, this is the time the team can actually get to know each other on a social level. So build in some team building social activities on those 2 days as well.
Fun stuff, skirmish and that kind of fun stuff that people do on offsites.
Or wine tasting, that's always
wine tasting. Oh, I love that.
And then the last one is roles and responsibilities. So, team members might have moved on throughout the last couple of months. So, getting the team back in and being really clear on what it is they do and what is expected of them is really important. So they're the 6 steps that I use, that CultureFit uses to engage a team from the start, or even now as teams are gearing up to going back to working in a team environment. There's plenty of things you can do to definitely start building that engagement, resetting and reconnecting around these 6 steps.
Awesome. I mean, that really breaks it down nicely, and nice and simple process, and we can really get our head around each part of that. And obviously this is relevant to whether you do this virtually, through virtual communication, or through face-to-face communication. It works either way.
Yeah, definitely. You can start doing these on a Zoom call with your team at any time, and just start the conversation.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, communication and having those conversations is the key to bringing people together. If you create silos and borders, what chance do we have? Yep. So now, Katie, I love case studies and examples. So have you got any, case studies or examples of how you've implemented these processes with a particular organization, and give us the journey and the result?
Yeah, so I have worked with different organizations to create these 6 steps. One of the teams I've worked with was in the defence sector, and they hadn't done any work around any talk around what their vision is, their team purpose, communication, even down to roles and responsibilities. It was very unclear around who does what. Yep. So we started the day doing a exercise on building trust. So I work with teams around getting to know each other on a deeper level. So the first exercise I usually do with teams is around, just come up with the answer to 3 simple questions around where did you grow up, how many siblings do you have, and what's the challenge of your childhood. And this gives them insight to where people are actually coming from, and sometimes some, an understanding or an awareness of, that's why you do what you do.
I like that.
Yeah, so, that's one exercise I do. And then another one is around using the DISC model to really understand people's behaviours and tendencies, and another deeper understanding and empathy is created within the team when they can understand their people different behaviours within their teammates.
Perfect.
And then from then we go through and we like I said, we talk through the shared vision and the team purpose, and then we look at communication, values and behaviours, and also the roles and responsibilities. And I do that using it helps me using a wall art, which is it basically, once the team have had those conversations, then we put pen to paper, and it's a massive piece of paper that they can then put on the wall and have to, remind them where they're coming from, remind them what they agreed to, and also helps induct employees into, where they said they were heading and how they're going to get there as well. It also helps to communicate to the rest of the business, the team's strategy on moving forward.
I like that. And everybody kind of knows at every point in time where they're at on that journey.
Yeah, exactly.
No hidden agendas, and everybody knows what they're there to do. I like that. Now you mentioned DISC profiling. Obviously everybody knows about DISC, but just for the people who don't, give us a real quick 30-second analysis of what DISC is and how that works.
So DISC is a personality profiling tool that you can do, that you do an assessment, you answer a few questions, and it will come out kind of based on your preference style. So you have D, which is a dominant, I, which is influence styles, which is more, those two are more your extroverted type of people. And then you've got C, which is conscientious, and S, which is more steady. And those two are more your introvert. And when you answer the survey, it will come out where you tend to be, your preference is. I mean, it doesn't mean that that's exactly who you are. Everyone has a little bit of each of those behaviours and styles throughout their personality types. But what it does when you're working with teams is get them to really have an understanding of, why that person acts the way they do. D's are very direct, dominant type of people. If you're having a conversation with them, they just want, three quick facts that can, so them to understand where you're coming from.
Don't waste my time. Don't give me an essay. Just get to the point. I'm busy. I've got meetings.
An I person are more your people. So they want to be, they get their energy off people. And I'm sure the I types have really struggled through isolation, being not involved in, conversation and, not seeing their friends and not seeing people and working with people. So that's that personality type. The C's are more your personality types that are, more factual based. They're into the details. They won't make a decision until they've seen everything.
Yeah.
They love rules and regulations.
Yeah.
And when you are talking to them, you really need to go in with a detailed plan and have all the information right in front of them.
Yep.
And then your S's are your steady, supportive. They love security type of people that are great at supporting, I guess, the rest of the teams and being that great support. Yeah.
I suppose how you make them feel is probably the most important thing with it.
Yeah.
With those types of, I mean, because DISC has been around for ages and ages. Is it still as prominent and relevant as it was years ago? Are there any other platforms, or is it still the one that a lot of people use?
There's plenty of other platforms, and there's Myers-Briggs, there's Insights, there's I think DISC is another tool that and they're all quite similar. I've used multiple ones, and the one person I could probably put in the same category across all.
Okay.
It is just another tool to help teams have an understanding of the way people talk, behave and communicate within a team or with each other. So it is still very much used within businesses, but like I said, there's many of other tools as well that you can use that does just exactly the same.
Awesome. And I suppose, like, from my experience as a recruiter, a lot of companies profile potential candidates, employees, even more so just to see how they respond and the best way to manage them in the future, rather than whether it's a be all and end all. It's not a decision-making factor in their hiring. It's more just, how can I manage you better when you do come and work with us?
Yeah, and I've used it before for recruiting. You can also use it to build the ideal role as well. So you can look at the behaviours and styles that sit underneath what kind of role, the ideal candidate that you want for that role, and then use it as a recruitment tool as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Katie, that has been absolutely insightful. I mean, we could go for 2 hours because this is one of my favorite topics: high-performing teams, culture, human interaction. It's fascinating to me. But thank you so much for coming on the show and really going into such detail in what you do and how you do it. And hopefully you've given the audience loads of information and inspiration to really make sure that they look at this time and moving forward, building a really, really strong, high-performing team, because it will only help them in the future. But before we go, maybe just tell us a bit about how we can get in touch with you if we want to, make some inquiries and learn more about what CultureFit does.
Well, thanks, Darren, for having me on. I really enjoyed jumping on your podcast.
Always a pleasure.
So yeah, if you want to find out more, definitely go onto my website, and I have a culture fitness test. You can see how fit your culture is by completing that, and I can get in touch and help you build a free strategy around engagement for your team. And you can also find me on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And before we go, I always like to ask my guests, just give us a couple of ideas or a couple of things that people should put in place right now after listening to this and watching this podcast, stuff that they can help them with their teams right now.
Yeah, I think the one thing that definitely with all this uncertainty and everything that's changed, I think one thing that managers can do right now is book a one-to-one with your employees and make sure they have clarity on what it is they do and what is expected of them. I think with all the changes that's going on, it's really important that we check in and make sure that everyone has clarity around their job and their job role and what that looks like for them, over the next 6 to 12 months.
Perfect. So just communication, being honest, allowing your people to build a relationship with the roadmap, and that's how you start to build engagement.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, Katie, thank you so much again. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm going to put all the links to how to find Katie in the show notes for the podcast. So thanks again for joining us today, Katie. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Aaron.
My pleasure. And for everybody out there, we hope you had a great show. You learnt a lot, and we'll be back very, very soon for another episode. Have a great day.